What if the greatest threat aboard the USS Enterprise isn't a Gorn invasion, a Klingon warship, or even some ancient cosmic entity, but one of the crew we've trusted from the very beginning? That's exactly the terrifying possibility that Star Trek Strange New Worlds just introduced. Season 4's The Griffin Incident doesn't simply tell another haunted starship story. It quietly plants the seeds for something much bigger, something far more personal. By the end of the episode, La'an Noonien-Singh isn't just another victim of a supernatural force. She may have taken the first real step toward becoming the very monster she spent her entire life trying not to be. And if the ending is telling us the truth, then the haunting aboard the USS Griffin is far from over. Before we get into the theory, let's quickly recap what happened. The Griffin incident follows Captain Pike and the Enterprise crew as they investigate the abandoned USS Griffin, a Federation vessel whose crew mysteriously vanished after reporting strange hallucinations. What initially appears to be another classic ghost story slowly transforms into one of the darkest psychological episodes the series has ever produced. The mysterious entity tied to former security chief Rose Harper begins manipulating the Enterprise crew by exploiting their deepest fears and buried emotions. While everyone experiences disturbing visions, the entity ultimately focuses on La'an, forcing her to confront the one fear she's never been able to escape. And that's where everything changes. Ever since she was introduced in Strange New Worlds, La'an has been carrying an emotional burden unlike any other character. Her last name alone defines her existence: Noonien-Singh. For most people in the Federation, that name immediately brings to mind one individual: Khan Noonien-Singh, arguably the most infamous genetically engineered tyrant in human history. La'an has spent years trying to prove she isn't him. She has dedicated herself to Starfleet discipline, strict emotional control, and protecting others. Every decision she makes is driven by one simple goal: never become the person everyone expects her to become. That's why the Griffin entity chooses her. This wasn't random. The haunting doesn't simply possess people, it studies them. It finds the emotional wound they're desperately trying to hide and slowly twists it until they can't tell what's real anymore. For La'an, that wound has always been identity. Deep down, she's terrified that her bloodline determines her destiny. Season 3 quietly made that fear even worse. After becoming partially Vulcan during the previous storyline, La'an was already struggling with questions about whether she had fundamentally changed. The experience left psychological scars that she hadn't fully processed. She wasn't just wondering whether she was still herself, she was wondering whether every change pushed her closer to losing control. The Griffin doesn't invent those fears, it weaponizes them. That's what makes this episode so unsettling. Instead of confronting some external monster, La'an spends most of the story fighting the darkest version of herself. Eventually, that battle becomes impossible to win. The entity finally breaks through. What follows may be one of the most disturbing sequences in modern Star Trek. La'an begins hunting members of her own crew. First, she manipulates the transporter system, attempting to beam Erica Ortegas directly into her, a horrifying death that thankfully exists within the illusion. Moments later, she turns her attention toward Uhuda, attempting to stab one of her closest crewmates. Then comes the moment that changes everything: James T. Kirk. Unlike the earlier attacks, this one is completely real. Under the Griffin's influence, La'an drives her dagger straight into Kirk's abdomen. For several terrifying moments, viewers are left wondering whether one of Star Trek's most iconic heroes has actually been killed before his legendary career even begins. Of course, Kirk survives, but survival isn't really the point. The important detail is that La'an crossed a line she never imagined possible. Even if she wasn't fully in control, she remembers what happened. She remembers becoming exactly what she's feared her entire life. That's the emotional wound the episode leaves behind. What's fascinating is that the writers never treat this like simple possession. Normally, horror stories let characters off the hook. The ghost made them do it. The alien controlled their mind. Problem solved. But the Griffin incident refuses to take that easy path. Instead, Pike notices that La'an genuinely blames herself. She doesn't see herself as innocent. She believes the Griffin only succeeded because there was already something inside her waiting to come out. That's heartbreaking, because viewers know La'an better than she knows herself. We've watched her repeatedly sacrifice her own happiness for others. We've watched her risk her life countless times. We've watched her fight impossible odds without hesitation. She's arguably one of the most honorable officers aboard the Enterprise. Yet none of that matters inside her own mind. All she sees is Khan. Captain Pike understands exactly what's happening. Rather than filing a report that permanently brands La'an as the officer who nearly murdered James Kirk, Pike quietly leaves those details out of his official Starfleet record. Some fans questioned whether that decision was ethical, but emotionally it makes perfect sense. Pike recognizes trauma when he sees it. He knows punishment won't heal someone already consumed by guilt. Instead, he shares one of his own childhood experiences involving what he describes as a ghost haunting. Whether Pike literally believes in ghosts isn't really the point. He's trying to tell La'an something much more important. Sometimes, impossible experiences leave scars that can't simply be explained away. Sometimes, surviving is enough. At least, that's what Pike believes. The ending immediately proves him wrong. Just when it seems everything has been resolved, the camera quietly returns to the Griffin. Standing in the window is Rose Harper, watching, silent. Then she raises one finger to her lips. Shh. It's only a few seconds long, yet it completely changes the episode. Because that isn't a farewell, it's a warning. Rose Harper shouldn't still be there. If the haunting ended, she should be gone. Instead, she's watching La'an leave, almost like she's waiting, almost like the game isn't over yet. That tiny scene may actually be the most important moment of the entire episode. It suggests the Griffin never truly released La'an. Instead, it marked her. Think about how carefully the storyline has been building over multiple seasons. The writers have consistently explored one central question: can someone escape their heritage? For Spock, it's the struggle between humanity and Vulcan logic. For Una, it's hiding her Illyrian identity. For La'an, it's Khan. Each season has slowly pushed her closer to confronting that fear. Now, Season 4 may finally be transforming it into the show's biggest ongoing mystery. What if the Griffin entity didn't simply possess La'an? What if it awakens something? That possibility becomes even more unsettling when you remember how the entity operated. It never created fears, it amplified existing ones. So what happens if La'an begins doubting every decision she makes, every moment of anger, every violent instinct, every tactical choice? How will she know what's genuinely her and what might still be lingering influence from the Griffin? That's psychological horror at its best. The real threat isn't another possession, it's uncertainty. If La'an loses confidence in herself, she becomes vulnerable every single time she faces danger. That opens the door for countless future stories. Imagine La'an hesitating during combat because she fears hurting innocent people. Imagine avoiding close relationships because she no longer trusts her own mind. Imagine refusing promotions because she believes she's becoming too dangerous. Those consequences could shape her character for an entire season. And then there's Kirk. Their relationship has always carried emotional complexity. Now it's even more complicated. The woman who already struggled with impossible feelings for James Kirk has now nearly killed him. Even if Kirk forgives her, will La'an ever forgive herself? Probably not. That emotional distance could become one of Season 4's most tragic subplots. There's also another fascinating possibility. Rose Harper may not actually be the true villain. She could simply be another victim. The real evil might be whatever ancient force consumed the Griffin long before the Enterprise ever arrived. If that's true, Harper's final appearance isn't threatening La'an, it's warning her. She's trying to say that whatever destroyed the Griffin has now found a new host, and that host may be La'an herself. If that's where Strange New Worlds is heading, then this storyline could become one of the franchise's strongest long-form character arcs. Because the real battle isn't against monsters or haunted ships, it's against destiny. Can La'an prove that a Noonien-Singh isn't defined by genetics? Can she reject the legacy of Khan once and for all?
Or has the Griffin uncovered a darkness that was always waiting beneath the surface? That's the brilliant part of this episode. It never gives us an answer. Instead, it leaves us questioning everything we know about one of the Enterprise's most beloved officers. And honestly, that's exactly why the ending works so well. The final image isn't scary because of a ghost standing in a window. It's scary because La'an herself no longer knows if she's truly free. If Rose Harper is still watching, if the haunting never really ended, then the Griffin incident wasn't the conclusion of a horror story. It was a beginning of La'an's most dangerous journey yet. And based on that chilling final shot, Star Trek's Strange New Worlds has only just begun exploring the villain La'an has feared becoming all her life.